Where would I be if you left me gone? Oh.
Once upon a time, in a land not so far away, there was a young lady named Coy who had a special affinity for her dad's pancakes. Coy, she loved them so much because she was raised on the pancakes. She wouldn't eat anybody else's pancakes because her dads were just so special. They were always the perfect fluffiness with a little crisp on the edges, cooked for the perfect amount of time, just the right amount of buttery sweetness. You may know what that's like to have a favorite dish from a favorite cook. I mean, for a long time, I wouldn't eat anybody's barbecue except for my dad's. And to this day, I'm still skeptical about eating yeast rolls unless my mom made them. Much like me and some of you, Coy was convinced that no one could make pancakes like her dad. When she moved out, she would actually abstain from pancakes until she could go home and see Dad and have him make some for her. One day, Coy decided, you know what, this is ridiculous. I shouldn't have to come all the way to my dad's house just to get some pancakes. So she finally asked him for the recipe so she could make them at home by herself. He happily honored the request and wrote out the recipe on a piece of paper because, you know, some people still write things with pen and paper. And when he gave her this recipe, it had at least 10 ingredients: flour, sugar, baking powder, salt, milk, unsalted butter, not like regular butter, it has to be unsalted, egg, vegetable oil, vanilla extract. Coy was immediately overwhelmed. This just felt like too much. But she really wanted to recreate her dad's pancakes, so she bought all of the ingredients. But then she thought about all of the steps to the recipe, the measurements, the time allotments, and how her dad told her, you know, if you want to get it right, you got to make them in a cast iron skillet. And you got to pour out the exact right amount of batter or they won't cook right. And you got to cook it on one side for this long before you flip it over to the other side, because if you cook it too short or too long, they won't come out right. Then you got to let them sit for approximately 30 seconds before you serve them at the perfect temperature. And Coy just said, forget it. It's too much. I want pancakes, but this process is just too complex. I'll just have to go to Dad's house and have pancakes like I always have, because that's the only way I'll be able to enjoy them how I like them. And when I'm not at Dad's house, then I'll just be eating cereal for breakfast. Fast forward sometime later, Coy started dating a guy, and they quickly became an item. They just had great synergy. They felt at home when they were with each other. They took great care of each other. They moved in together, and one morning, while Coy was still asleep, her man got up early and surprised her with breakfast in bed. And wouldn't you know it, he made pancakes. Now, Coy was skeptical because she only trusted her dad's recipe, but it was just too complicated for her to make. She didn't want to hurt her man's feelings, so she reluctantly tried his pancakes. And to her amazement, these pancakes tasted just like her dad's. They had the perfect fluffiness, with a little crisp on the edges. You know what I'm talking about. Cooked for the perfect amount of time, just the right amount of buttery sweetness. Coy couldn't believe it. She said, babe, you got my dad's pancake recipe? He said, nah, why do you ask? She said, because these taste just like my dad's pancakes, and that recipe is super complex. It has like 10 ingredients and like 11 steps. He said, girl, no, I love you, but I ain't going through all of that to make some pancakes. These pancakes are made with love, straight out of the Aunt Jemima box. I just added a little bit of water. At this stage, Coy is perplexed. She couldn't believe that you could possibly have pancakes with the perfect fluffiness, a little crisp on the edges, cooked for the perfect amount of time, just the right amount of buttery sweetness, using Aunt Jemima mix and some water. Coy said, you lying. You made these from scratch. There is no way in the world you made these pancakes with 2 ingredients. He said, babe, think about it. We're out of flour, we're out of baking powder, and we're out of milk. There's no way I could have made these from scratch. Aunt Jemima takes care of that for us. You just combine the mix and the water, and voila. Coy was in disbelief, y'all, because she had been so discouraged by the complexity of her dad's 10 ingredient recipe. And now she is perplexed by the simplicity of her man's 2 ingredient recipe. You know, she was actually a little angry when she thought about all of the mornings she craved pancakes for breakfast, but just ate cereal because the recipe was too complex. She actually had an attitude with her boyfriend for a couple of hours because he exposed to her what she had been missing all of these years. Coy could have been enjoying pancakes she wanted all along because the manufacturer simplified the recipe down to 2 simple ingredients. It left her feeling perplexed by simplicity. Could it be that Coy's pancake dilemma is a mirror image of many people's theological dilemma? We've been told a life that pleases God requires an extensive, complicated list of ingredients. Do this. Don't do that. That's too short. That's too low. That's too high. That's too aggressive. That's too passive. Don't go here. Don't go there. Don't listen to this. Don't play that. Don't ask questions. Don't push back. Don't think for yourself. Don't show emotion unless you're in worship. And depending on your tradition, you shouldn't even show emotion in worship. Don't dance unless it's a praise dance. Don't meditate. Don't do yoga. Don't burn incense. Don't burn sage. Don't study African spirituality. You know that's witchcraft. Don't drink. Don't smoke. Don't miss church. And don't hang around with those that do. We've been told we can't please God without these ingredients, not realizing that the manufacturer simplified it for us. The manufacturer says, I created you in my image. And my image is represented in relationships. So if you want to show your love for me, here's the mix. Just add water. In other words, love yourself and love your neighbor. I got everything else covered. I hear you. I hear you loud and clear through the screen. But that's too simple, Christian. It can't be that easy when all of my life I thought I could only do it the way the church told me. We're perplexed by the simplicity of the gospel. And sometimes we miss out on abundant life because we reject the simplicity. I still hear you. I know what you're thinking. That's cute, Christian. But you ain't even take a text. You just preaching your opinion. Can you give me some Bible to back this up? Y'all, that is such a great question. I am so glad you asked. I promise y'all ask the best questions. In the Old Testament book of 2 Kings, chapter 5, there is a story told about a man by the name of Naaman. He was a wealthy general in the army of Syria. He was well respected by everyone. His major challenge in life is that he suffered from a skin disease called leprosy. Naaman, being a native of Syria, did not worship the God of Israel. In the cultural context of his day, your birthplace determined your theology. Different nations worshiped different gods. And somebody told Naaman that over there in Israel, there's a prophet named Elisha who can heal you of your disease if you go to him. Naaman, at the thought of being healed, of being delivered, of being set free of his infirmity, he got permission from the king and went to visit Elisha. All he wanted was to be free from this illness that plagued his life. Naaman wanted it so bad that he took with him the modern day equivalent of millions of dollars to give to Elisha in exchange for this miraculous healing. He assumed this was necessary in order for him to be healed. When he got to Elisha's house, listen to this, Elisha didn't even come out to see him. Elisha had his messenger meet Naaman, this powerful general, at the doorstep with these instructions. He said, Naaman, if you want to be healed, if you want to live the abundant life that you've been promised, just go wash yourself in the Jordan River 7 times and you'll be straight. That infuriated Naaman. He was like, you mean to tell me I brought all of this money, I followed all of this protocol, I traveled all this way, and you got the nerve to tell me that all I need to do is dip in the Jordan 7 times? You got to be playing. I've been struggling with this issue for as long as I can remember, and all I had to do was take a little dip in the Jordan River, and I would have been good. Some of you felt like that the first time you encountered the simplicity of the greatest commandment. You thought about all of the sacrifices you made to measure up to this complicated system. You considered all of the relationships you messed up trying to do it the complex way. You thought about all the fun you missed out on. You thought about all of the time that you lost. Upon encountering the simplicity of the gospel, you were perplexed. Not only were you perplexed, but you felt cheated. You felt like you were lied to. And instead of taking it up with the people who lied to you, you took it out on the people that told you the truth. Be honest. We've all been there. We've all been Naaman at some point or another. We've all overcomplicated situations that required a simple fix. Naaman left enraged by Elisha's instructions. He wanted Elisha to come out and do some big hocus pocus magical performance, wave a wand, lay his hands on them, sprinkle oil on them, and boom, he's healed because he did this big performance. But instead, Elisha gave Naaman straightforward simplicity. As he left, he was determined to decline Elisha's invitation to wash in the Jordan. But Naaman had some servants with him who saw the practicality of the instructions. Verse 13 of chapter 5, that's the text for today. It says, but his servants approached and said to him, Naaman, if the prophet had commanded you to do something difficult, would you not have done it? How much more when all he said to you was wash and be clean? This is why you need some people in your circle who will challenge you when you stray away from yourself. As a matter of fact, right now in the chat, go ahead and tag that person that you know you can count on to pull your coattail when you stray away from yourself, and tell them thank you. Go ahead, seriously, right now, tag that person and tell them thank you for checking me when I stray away from myself, when I lose sight of myself. Thank you for being a good friend when I get out of touch with God's purpose in my life. Yes, I said stray away from yourself, because the best way to get in touch with your creator is to get in touch with the creation. Every journey upwards towards the divinity in heaven begins with a journey inwards towards the divinity in you. And we all need some people who will check us when we lose touch with ourselves. That's what Naaman's servants did for him. Naaman forgot why he came. In the words of Pastor Callie, he overemphasized the means at the expense of the goal. The goal was to be healed, but he got caught up in the means. He came to get instructions on how to get better, and he rejected the instructions because they were too simple. And the people in his circle said, you're going to miss out on your blessing by rejecting simplicity. Had he commanded you to do something difficult, would you not have done it? How much more when all he said to you was wash and be clean? That's it, y'all. I'm done. No, I'm not saying I'm done with my introduction. Like, the message is over. I'm done. I just want to say to you that maybe like Coy, you've been living too long trying to make your pancakes with the complicated recipe when all you needed was the simplicity of Aunt Jemima and a little water. Maybe you've been trying to get your healing the difficult way, when your healing was locked up in the simplicity of wash and be clean. You've been looking for formulas, but God has been offering you freedom. Maybe you've been trying to connect to God by seeing the Bible as a divine, complicated rule book, when all you needed the whole time was two ingredients from Jesus: love yourself and love your neighbor. Jesus came to a people who had overcomplicated the faith and told them your love for God can be boiled down to just two ingredients: love yourself and love your neighbor. You want to know how to represent the name of Jesus? Love yourself and love your neighbor. You want to know how to live an abundant life? Love yourself and love your neighbor. You want to know how to follow the way of Jesus? Love yourself and love your neighbor. You want to know how to really get your breakthrough? Love yourself and love your neighbor. You want to know how to effectively love God? Love yourself and love your neighbor. The scariest aspect of the gospel for this generation is its simplicity. Simplicity is scary, but it's also your salvation. Your healing is in the simplicity. Your peace is in the simplicity. Your joy is in the simplicity. Your freedom is in the simplicity. You've been looking for formulas, but God has offered you freedom. Jesus says, I have come that you might have life and life more abundantly. The joy of the abundant living that Jesus has promised is tied up in embracing the simplicity of two ingredients. Besides, if Jesus told you to do something difficult, would you not have done it? How much more if all he said was love your neighbor and love yourself?
And all this love is waiting for you, my brother, my sister. All this love is waiting for you. Come on, sing all this love is waiting for you, my brother, my sister, all this love is waiting for you, my neighbor, my family. Come on, sing all this love is waiting for you, my brother, my sister, yeah. Sing all this love is waiting for you, my neighbor, my family. Sing all this love is waiting for you, my brother, my sister, yeah. Sing all this love is waiting for you, my neighbor, my family. Can you play it one time? Come on, let's sing it together one more time. Sing all this love is waiting for you, my brother, my sister, yeah. Sing all this love is waiting for you, my neighbor, sing my family. One more time. Sing all this love, yeah, is waiting for you, my brother and my sister, yeah. Sing all